as you guys probably know, the gallery has changed its direction. Pam has decided to delve into the world of art and medicine because, you know, she wants to make a fortune, and she thought that would be the best way to do it. So we're going to be doing shows that are illness specific, and obviously this one is MS. And each show we have a lead artist who has the illness to reach out so that we don't sort of seem like we're jumping in other people's territory. We want an expert who knows what they're going through to be our lead artist. And this time that is Susan. So Susan went to UCLA and studied design. She expresses her creativity as an interior designer. She was diagnosed with MS in 1988 and began stockpiling materials. And if you look over here, she uses a lot of her materials from her illness in her art, which is something I found a lot with patient artists. Lydia Emily.
Yes, sir.
You already had to deal with cancer.
I did.
And you're here.
I am.
You're doing great. And then you were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2012. So long.
I got 2 for 1.
2 for 1. And you've become a spokesperson for the MS Society, sharing your story and all that. So we're thrilled to have you here. Ananda Karabo, how do you pronounce your last name?
Ananda Karabo.
Karabo, okay. So you were diagnosed in 2019, and you created pieces inspired by your day-to-day struggle with MS, from dreams to terrifying nightmares. And you are medical expert, Leslie Tarlow, right? Mm-hmm. So you are a clinical neurologist of MS.
Nurse practitioner.
At the University of Southern California.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to start with them and then get to you. So I'm very excited to have the 3 of you here. And one reason I wanted you here is because you guys are sort of looking at you from the outside. You're sort of like a timeline. You don't really show any symptoms. You're still walking, you're not walking. So why don't you guys?
Good for you.
Hey, you gotta have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
So we'll just talk about, as you got diagnosed and where you are now, were you given a realistic view of what it would be like? And especially for you who's sort of going into it, probably, I'll say, healthier at the moment. Did you know what was going to be going on?
You know, I asked some questions. I had some ideas, but I also had the feeling that no 2 people illnesses were the same. So just because someone's in a wheelchair, someone's not, doesn't mean that's where I'm going to end up. However, prior to, I was diagnosed before I was married. And prior to getting married, I did say to my husband, if I end up in a wheelchair, are you okay with that? And that was important for me to know for the next step. And he, of course, said no.
So here.
Yeah. So yeah, I had some idea, but I also had a very, very slow, my illness moved very slowly. So it wasn't until, I would say, about 5 to 6 years ago, I started using a wheelchair. So, you know, I kept asking my doctor, how will I know? How will I know? And he said, you'll just know.
Lydia.
Hi.
When we first met, which was in the gallery, the day you met your husband
Gallery.
at USC, you came down and you had just met Ted.
I just got on a date with Ted.
Yeah, that was your first
Fresh.
date that day. So that was a good day for you.
It was a good day for him, for sure.
Yeah. You sounded really dire at that point. Like
So
I
when
might
I
not
was-
make it 6 months.
Oh, not even might. When I was diagnosed, I was told that I had less than 2 years to live.
Really?
Because, oh my God,
Yes.
girl. So I was told that the way that I was seeing a doctor in Texas.
It
should have been
wasn't
the first.
our doctor.
It wasn't them. It wasn't them.
It was not.
I was
Leslie.
seeing them. I was seeing them at USC, Keck USC with Dr. Weiner, who I had an insane obsession with, painted him a million times. Then I had to go to Texas and did some art installations. I was there for a couple of years, and I saw this doctor, and he said, the way that your disease is progressing, it's going to be more like ALS, and you're going to lose your ability to use your lungs. You're going to lose. And he gave me this. He was like, "You're lying to you, and here are the death rates of people with MS, all this stuff." And I left Texas, and I was like, "Well, let's have a life then." And I went on Tinder and met my husband. I painted all these weird things. I lived like that was it. When I met him, literally, our first date, I was like, "This is the great thing about me. You'll never have a crazy ex, because I'm dying." And I lived like that. It was a little scary in the beginning, but truthfully, the pain of MS, the way MS presents in my case, the pain is so awesome. And that's in the correct, like, Oxford English Dictionary sense of the word, like encompassing awesome, that when he told me I was going to probably die, it wasn't terrible. I was like, there's an end to this. Because I'm walking, I look okay. I'm walking, talking to you, I look okay. And this day, the pain is so encompassing. So then I got back into USC, and I got back to Leslie, and they were like, "No, it's gonna suck, but it's gonna probably suck for a while." And then my husband would go to the doctor, and then we got married. And I mean, if I knew I was gonna live, I might have rethought this whole situation. I'm just kidding. But the joy is I get to be with my kids, which is the most important thing in the world to me. The sorrow is I get to be with the pain. The pain is, so I was just telling her what I do when I have to, when it's nice enough people ask me to speak at stuff like this, or I have to promote my book, or I have to be at an art show. I take all my pills a half an hour before I have to be here, and I drink a double chai latte thing, and I'll be okay, and I can do this talk, and I can get through it. But my husband, in about an hour, will have to roll me up and put me in his pocket and take me home. And that'll be it till tomorrow. And then the only thing you have to put on the pain at that point, because I've already taken the amount I'm allowed to take, is some really like top shelf Powers whiskey, like the Blue Label, perfect, and some gummies, because I can't take any more pharmaceuticals without risking my ability to be alive for my kids. So right now, my trajectory is pain management. That's how it presents for me. So what she was saying is correct, it presents differently for each person. I am walking, but I'm walking on thousands of bee states. Or I'm walking, right now I'm talking to you guys, and as soon as the pain medicine starts to wear off, it'll feel like there are fire ants between my gums and teeth for the rest of the night. All stuff you can't see, like you can see the wheelchair.
So, how's your future looking?
Like,
how do you feel?
one of us.
What were you told when you got diagnosed, and is it the experience you're having now?
When I was diagnosed, the reason why they found out that I had MS in the first place is because I was involved in a car accident. They did the MRI, CT scan, and they said, okay, there's something on here, something white in your brain that should not be on there. So from there, it took me a few months to be diagnosed. The ophthalmologist, the neurologist, all the different kind of specialists I've seen told me, you're young, you seem very healthy, you should be fine. You won't lose your ability to walk, which was my biggest fear. Slowly, I am starting to get more symptoms. Like, for example, just started about 4 weeks ago. At night, my legs they started getting really restless, and I thought, okay, that happens to normal people too. Like, it's okay. But now it's getting to the point where these spasms, they're so excruciating. Last night, my boyfriend over there, Giga, not for you.
Hey, boyfriends.
Yay, Tinder. Yeah. But yeah, he saw me writing in pain, and had to rush out to the pharmacy to help me with these things, stuff I couldn't take care of myself. The doctors did tell me I should be fine, but I'm seeing more and more it's not that way. I haven't been able to hold a job for the last about 3 years. I lose them, and it has to do with, they think I just have lack of attention to detail, and it's not that I'm very like hyper focused, but some wires get crossed, I'm not sure. So it's definitely cognitive issues I'm having more and more. Even in the middle of a conversation, I might totally blank and have no idea what I was just saying and laugh it off, try to make a joke, but in reality, it's very upsetting for me. So I've noticed my issues are a lot to do with my fatigue. That's the main thing. I've been doing different, probably not the most healthiest things to kind of get a kick, not coffee, but nicotine patches, which,
Yeah.
again, I think that's pretty bad, right? Goodness.
Nicotine is not good for MS. I mean, it's not good for all of us
What?
because of our lungs, but it also can make your MS. So, is there something else maybe?
Even if you don't smoke it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm quitting today.
Why don't you talk about your work, what you do with the MS patient? Now, you used to work with other mobility.
So my background is I was a nurse in '79, and when most of you were not born yet. And I was an ER nurse for most of that career. And then after my third child was born, I was trying to pump milk in the ER to take home, whatever. I said, you know what, just put me on call. And then after that, I said, just don't call. So I took some time off. I went back to school and got my nurse practitioner at UCLA in gerontology, because I thought, you know what, I'm aging. I was close to 50. I thought, I don't want to be doing this bedside nursing in the ER when I'm 70. So I went into gerontology. I worked in the nursing homes for like 3.5 years. And then I got recruited to a practice in Northridge by a doctor who was a 30-year specialist in MS. And he said to me, would you like to join me? You were recommended, would you like to join me in my MS practice? And I said, well, I don't know. What's MS? Because I didn't see MS in the ER. And so I did 2 days a week with him and 3 days a week in the nursing homes during the summer to try and figure out if this is what I wanted to do. And I did. It was very interesting to me intellectually. It was, I thought I could do a lot of good with the patient population who's young. And if I could help them, I could help them for a long time, as opposed to helping somebody who's 80 or 90 years old, which I was very proud of my work in gerontology as well. But yeah, so I've been doing MS since 2004. And at that time, we only had 4 medicines available. They were all self-injectable medicines, one of which Susan had, and that was it. I mean, we really didn't have a lot. We had more than nothing. So people who were diagnosed before the early 90s, I didn't really have medicine. That's when the first medicines came out. Beta serum was the first, and it was supposed to be the gold standard. And there was a lottery for who got to get the drug. And so those people are more likely to be having mobility issues today because they didn't have the benefit of the medicine. Those people who have been diagnosed in the last 10 years are much luckier because we have 30 some odd medicines that are very, very effective at slowing or halting progression of MS. So MS is a progressive neurological disorder. And like Lydia Emily said, it just, and like Susan said, it is different for every single person. And the majority of the symptoms that people experience with MS are invisible. Fatigue, cognition, pain. They used to say pain was not a symptom of MS. If you have pain, you don't have MS.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Those were the dark ages when I first started. They used to say you couldn't have children. They used to say a lot of things that were wrong. And so we've come a long way in the last 20 years, I guess.
You don't have any pain. Oh, you don't?
It's been a long time. Pardon?
We were just saying.
Oh, you don't have pain?
I have no pain.
No pain. No.
Really none.
So one of the things I noticed over here,
So
since multiple sclerosis is a sensational disease because the sensory system is affected a lot. So it may be pins and needles for Lydia Emily and pain, and it may just be vision or balance, which are also sensory things for other people that have MS.
Yeah. I lost a sight in my left eye, so that's an MS thing. I just don't really ever think about it anymore. I used to wear a patch because I wanted to be a pirate, and I thought it'd be cool. But it's something that people in show business never tell you because they use patches in TV. Eyeball sweats. When you put the patch on, it starts to get hot in there. And I was like, this isn't worth how cool it looks. So I just don't do it anymore. But it made art almost unbearable because there's no depth perception anymore.
Well, let's talk about art. So since we're here in an art gallery, so you use a lot of your supplies to tell your story, and you have yourself tell your narrative, and you're doing some body-centric work. So why don't you start? What I know of you is that as you sort of lost your ability to move, you started organizing supplies because that you could control that. So why don't you talk about that, and then Emily can talk about hers.
Yeah, so look, I mean, I've always loved creating art. I was an interior designer before I started, but I went to UCLA and took a lot of different art classes while I was there. And it seemed it was almost natural to just start stockpiling all those little bottles. Some were the saline solutions, some were the actual medicine. And I just I kept putting them in a box, thinking one day I'm going to create something. And once my kids were actually in school full time, I pulled out the box and I got to work. And I actually enlisted one of my kids while I was creating things to make something as well. But like you mentioned, I would create challenges for myself. I would take a specific box and I would take the bottles, and you can't tell from there, but they're different sizes. And I would try and create a pattern within the limits of the box. So not only was I creating order, but it was a mental challenge for me also. And that particular piece is called Chaos. And even though those pieces that are put into the bottom base, even though I threw those bottles in haphazardly, there's still order to the chaos. And I found it very, not being able to control my symptoms. I used my art to control the situations.
So Lydia, a lot of the artists that I deal with, which is a lot of patient artists, they'll do work about their illness, but they don't put their face on it as much. They sort of show the symptoms, they show their life, but you, whether it's on a canvas or murals, giant murals,
Yeah.
your face is 20 feet tall, you really put yourself
Oh, how
out
could you
there.
keep this from the people? I like to, like the one I did in there where I show what it is that you see and what it is that I feel. I thought it was important to make it a human person, like to make it somebody who's recognizable. And if I have it up at a show and I'm standing next to it, they're like, it's not a person you've never seen. You can see me standing right there looking exactly like the painting. And then you can see how I feel. And it like helps it click for people. Because people are always like, I can't see it, so I don't know what it feels like. So that's why I put the stakes through my feet and the sandbags and I have trigeminal neuralgia a lot. So my trigeminal nerve, which happens to people with MS, and it's brutal. I tried to show what all that's like. The other ones that I had with, not those, but ones that are in there, there's a woman, she's my neighbor, and she suffered with cancer, and she was looking for what it was, couldn't figure out what kind of cancer it was. So that's why I used her in one. I feel like when I put people who you can approach at the show, you can get more of the story than what you're just looking at, as opposed to using, I have lots of friends who are models and because of our business, and I don't necessarily want to use somebody who is aesthetically symmetrical, perfect, and what they call in the art world tiss and flowers. I don't want it to be, I want it to be somebody real, somebody tangible, somebody who looks like your neighbor or yourself, you know? And that was really important to me. And I'm always there when I need a model, so.
Did you get a lot of the, oh, you're very brave thing? I always, so many times people just look at us and go, any of us with a chronic illness, oh, you're very brave. Whereas in fact, there's really no alternative.
There's
It's not
brave
like we
is
picked
something,
it.
it doesn't, I mean, it's, I understand, there's two sides, right? Two things can be at the same time. One is people want to say something to you and they don't really know what that thing is. And brave is like a compliment. And they're like trying to compliment. I get that. I don't think anybody's trying to be a dick. I think they're trying to be, like when somebody dies and you look to see them and you go, I'm so sorry for your loss. Just doesn't, it's not the right, nothing's going to be the right thing to say. So I'll take brave. I'll take it as a compliment. The answer is I'm just living. You would still live, no matter how much pain you're in, no matter when people go through heartbreak, which is debilitating. Heartbreak is, anyone in here who's had real heartbreak, you can't breathe. You just feel like you want to burn your house down or theirs. And you still get up and you go to work. And you still, and some of the best albums are created that, some of the best pieces of art are created from that suffering. And that suffering is very analogous to me as the fire ants. It's debilitating, it's horrible, but it can also create something if you let it.
And your work is sort of, it's figurative, but it's also a lot more abstract. You're also earlier in your career. So why don't you talk about how the MS presenting itself in your artwork?
Okay, honestly, I didn't have any kind of interest in art at all before I had MS, but I got to a point where I was experiencing such trauma, anger, frightened, and I couldn't put it into words. And even if I did, I feel like the people I was speaking to, whether they had MS or not, didn't understand. So whenever I painted, I just kind of zone out and go with my feelings. Whatever stroke I do, it's just, I'm basically being led by that, by either a dream I had that was terrifying and related to having MS.
Here you have some very talented people who have an outlet for it. But what are you seeing with other people who might not know how to deal with these limitations they have now and the pain? And
You know, one of the things that Ananda said that really struck me as something that people don't understand, including and especially family members,
Yeah.
is just, you know, get it together. Just
Suck it
push
up.
through it. You know, just no pain, no gain. Come on, you know, just, you know, they don't understand or empathize with the difficulty that these symptoms present.
Yeah.
And
Whereas cancer, they would have a lot of empathy for.
of course,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the MS symptoms are invisible. So, you know, they, it's very difficult. So what do I do in the clinic? I try and help the patient understand that what they're going through is terrible, and we can help them with their symptoms. We can help them with their disease progression. We have really good medicines. I recommend a lot of physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychotherapy, all of these, art therapy, all of these things can be very helpful. And this is a lifetime illness that strikes people when they are young, traditionally. The bell curve is 20 to 50. So we used to think that only people, you know, in their 20s got MS. I had a patient who was a student at USC. She was from Colorado. She was 17 when she had a neurologist tell her that her MRI looked like MS, but she couldn't have MS because she was only 17. And he didn't treat her. And then when she came to our clinic 3 years later, she had gone 3 years without treatment, which what we know now, which we didn't know then, is how important it is to treat early and treat with the big guns early. So back in 2004, when I started, it was thought, well, you just use the least risky medicine at first. And if you need to, you add on therapy. Back then, we didn't have these stronger drugs, so we'd add on a little bit of cancer methotrexate drug. We'd add on a little steroid drug. But now, or we'd escalate to the next more effective drug. Now we understand that when you're newly diagnosed, we want to put you on the highest efficacy drug we can, because that's what's going to really keep you stable and from progressing. Now, the IPAs and the health insurance companies don't always agree with us. So I spend a lot of my time writing appeal letters. But that's, you know.
So with 30 drugs, and if any one of these three come to you, how do you, is it mixed match? Is it just like throwing against the wall to see which one works?
No, it's very, very tailored to their individual profile, both medically and lifestyle-wise and personality. I mean, some patients, they don't want the big guns. They're afraid of the risk. I had one patient tell me, she was 27, 28. On the same day, these two patients came in. They were both on a highly effective medication. This is back in the Northridge days. And they said, they both lost their vision from MS. One patient said, and I wanted to put them on this highly effective medicine. One patient said to me, I'm not going to take that. I want to be around for my kids. And the next patient said, you can imagine, right? I want that drug. I want to be around for my kids.
Yeah.
So you have to take people where they're at, and then you work on that. And if they continue to decline, you bring up that, you see them every 3 months until they get on the proper therapy. But you don't abandon them. I mean, I had a patient with MS that would only take Chinese herbs. And I still saw her every 6 months and said, how's it going? And what can I help you with? And I told her to tell her Chinese doctor not to give her anything that would stimulate her immune system because she had an autoimmune disorder, and that would make it worse. That's what we do.
So this is to all of you, but I'm going to start with Lydia. So, excuse me. In this picture over here, the one in the middle, it sort of shows how you adapted. Like I've seen a number of photos of you and paintings you've done where you show you have to wrap, you can't really
Right.
hold the brush anymore. So
Right. So
wrap
I have
it around.
ataxia and fatigue, so my hands will start to shake. This is why, I don't know if you saw, I fan and then I have to stop, and I fan and I have to stop. So anything I'm holding, I can pick this up and use it, But after about a minute or two, I have to put it down. My grip just fails. So I started wrapping the brush around my hand because then I don't have to, just that little thing, that's holding. You don't think of it because you're all healthy, but that will start to, and I'll just drop it. So if you drop the brush mid-painting, you're gonna make a streak down the middle of it and it gets on the floor and all these things. So if I had it tied, I didn't have to have a grip, and that made it so I could hold it for longer. But now the ataxia kicks in and it shakes a lot. So again, everything I do is for just a minute, and then I wear these overalls because I put my hands inside here when they start to shake a lot so that I don't take away from someone else talking, or, so I just put them in here like a barrel and I hide them. So that painting, I wanted to do a self-portrait and I couldn't hold the mirror up either. So I did the mirror and then I decided just to leave it in. And yeah, I was, again, just trying to show so because of my multiple sclerosis, I started having seizures. And so this one is about I was trying to say what it's like to have a seizure. I always thought of, I'm going to show my age, not a boomer, but so close. So I always thought that the people who had the most control when I was growing up were like guys in suits, businessmen. There's briefcase, and they're walking, so important, or wherever. For some reason, those guys, when I was young, seemed to be like the guys running stuff. So the only way I could describe what it was like to have a seizure would be one of those guys with no control, falling, and so that's what that painting is. And that one is Texas. That's when they told me I wasn't going to live. And there are times when I've had to use a wheelchair, just because I'm walking right now, I've had times where I couldn't walk at all. It kind of like ebbs and flows, right? MS is a fickle lever. It's a fickle lever. It's, it love bombs you, and it needs to be all about them. And then they disappear, and you have this kind of this thing where you think maybe you're okay for a minute, right? But you're not, and then it comes and it pulls it out again.
So one of the things I talk about a lot with patients is sort of the time restraints of it. Like, how much time does it take you to get up and moving because you can't move as well? And, it takes time. It takes time to be sick. It gets in the way of everything. And people don't think of MS or cancer as something that takes time from you to just live.
Sure.
So are you finding that, or are you still not finding that where you are?
Yeah, I am finding it for sure. It takes me a long time to do like household chores or prepare myself. And I didn't think this would be happening so quickly because, again, I've only been diagnosed 5 years ago. But I guess there's this term spoonie. I don't fully understand it. There's
What?
how many spoonie?
Spoon theory. Spoon theory?
Spoon theory. Okay.
Yeah, there's
Energy. How much energy you
Yeah.
have at the beginning of the day, how many spoons you have of energy. You've not heard of that?
No.
Okay. Well, I didn't teach you well.
I might have forgotten
Well, that's
with my short-term
that's
memory
true.
loss. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's a
Yeah, pretty much I'm not working with too many spoons on a given day, but there's like once a month or something, I get a spark of energy, feeling a little bit like my old self. And I really try to live that day. But then the next few days, I'm dead to the world. I'm in bed, can't do much at all. So
How's your spoons?
It's changed over the years. But it does take me longer to do things, and I have to factor that into my day. I do take a medication which gives me, I have less fatigue, which helps.
You're taking like an upper?
No, it's Provigil.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Does it like wake you up?
It's a stimulant.
It's for people who have narcolepsy.
We use,
Can I have that? I
Yeah.
want it. Yeah, I'll ask my doctor.
I mean,
Is it for ADD? Is it also for ADD?
really,
no, they developed it for narcolepsy. We use it in off-label in MS. It wasn't FDA, they didn't do clinical trials to indicate that as an indication, but mostly the insurance companies will approve it for the use of fatigue and MS. So it basically affects the sleep and wake center as opposed to whole brain, where a stimulant like Adderall or Ritalin or something like that will just affect everything, and you could get side effects more.
One thing I always ask our medical people when I do interviews is, like you were saying, you've had a couple of different careers in medicine, and I'm a big believer in there's certain people who should have certain specialties. Like you were saying, you might meet someone in their 20s and stay with them for 10, 20, watch them have kids.
40.
Whereas some people, I think, are better to be in an emergency room and never talk to their patients. Just do their thing, get the adrenaline rush. So why don't you talk about sort of what type of doctor you think, or nurse practitioner, is suited for a long-term care situation?
I think they're drawn to it. So when I first started in nursing, I thought I wanted that adrenaline rush. I started in the ICU. It was boring. We took the CCU. It was more interesting, but I didn't like the fact that 50-year-old people were dying right in front of my eyes because, of their heart disease or whatever. So, and I didn't like that the people in the ICU were dying either, on their ventilators. In the emergency room, I took them in, I patched them up, and I sent them to the unit. So they didn't die there in the ER. And either that or they were already dead when they came in. So that was my feeling about the ER. I really liked the ER. But as a mother raising 3 young children, it was tough to be there for my kids and also to be in the ER and maintain my skills. When I went from 4 days to 3 days a week, I felt my skills were slipping in the ER because you really have to be fast and quick and smart. I chose gerontology as a specialty as a nurse practitioner because I thought, well, this is an aging population, and I'll always have a job.
Right.
So when I got recruited to MS, I really had to decide whether or not I wanted to give up my dream of, being a gerontology specialist and go into this unknown area of autoimmune disease, which at the time we didn't even know was autoimmune. It was neurological. And I think that after doing it for a couple of days a week for a summer, I realized there was something the patients touched me inside. There was something about it that really emotionally drew me to that. And 6 months later, I got a call from Kaiser, who had the best geriatric clinics and the most money and the best benefits. And they called me and said, I had submitted my application several times to them, and they said, we have a job for you. Would you like to take it? And I thought about 2 seconds about it, and then I said, no, I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. And I recommended one of my colleagues in gerontology for that job, and she went on to make lots of money and have lots of benefits and stock options. But, MS, I'm not sorry for that decision. MS is really something I think is more of a calling.
That's nice.
Is there anything, before we open it up to these guys, anything in any of the other paintings that you guys didn't do or drawings that really moved you here on the show?
That we didn't do?
Yeah, ones that other people did that really speak to you. You get to all be art critics now.
I
I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
My favorite was actually the one she spoke about earlier when we saw how we see her from the outside and then how she's experiencing it. It just really resonated with me. Being someone who's also dealing with an
I did pay her.
dealing with
Thank you.
Yeah, dealing with an invisible illness and seeing it like not abstract, but seeing it like that was amazing.
Are there any pieces here that you particularly like?
You know, the Washington Post article. Sorry,
You didn't pay her.
by Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Speaks to me. It felt like it gave me and hopefully others with MS license to swear, you know, when they're not feeling good, and
Yeah.
and feel okay about it.
Fuck yeah.
Fucking
Hey.
And I think Elizabeth did a good job.
We
I
have
could read it.
a question.
So my question is about that educating those middle medical people to be more aware. Yeah. And I just wonder what the state of play.
Well, so when I was first practicing in the MS field, it became very evident to me, like you said, that people didn't know what MS was, and they really weren't focused on that. It was stroke, it was other things in neurology were much more important, right? And so I really thought, because I'm a nurse, I guess, maybe, that we should be teaching more about MS. And this kind of teaching, right, this sort of immersive experience teaching in universities, in schools, in nursing schools, in medical schools, before they get into practice, okay? I was a nurse for 25 years and did not know what MS was. So I was very lucky to have been contacted by a gentleman who was an MS specialist for 30 years and had such love for his patients that when he called me that night to ask me if I would join him, and I said I didn't know what MS was, he spoke to me for about 2 hours on the phone, telling me all about MS. And that's really what convinced me to try it out. Because
Dr. Weiner?
No, this was Dr. Brandis. Anybody who, after 30 years, loved what he was doing in medicine, period, that much, has to be.
So I need to stick my foot in here. Part of what I wrote about in my book is how frustrated I am with the MS Society, who I love. I love the MS Society, but I'm also, it's like a husband or a wife. You're like, I love you, but you want to shake them. Is that we
Except for
paint
this.
Oh, no, she shakes me too.
we paint MS as a society, and all the societies, all of them. There's a bunch of the MS Society being the biggest, but there's a bunch of other ones. It's all the commercials like 1 shot a month. Whee! And it's all young people, and they're beautiful young people in yellow and green, and they're all riding bikes. And there's a shitty fucking side of this. There's a terrifying, painful, debilitating, shitty side of it. And when people do cancer runs or whatever, you immediately think of mortality, of disability, they're shaving their head. Then we have a picture of it, and we take that, we go, and when somebody says, when I had cancer, say, oh, I have cancer, they're like, oh. But when you say I have MS, they go, oh. Like, other diseases are killing us in commercials. They're putting their face out there. They're showing the ugly with the good, and people make a visceral response with it, a cancer diagnosis, an ALS diagnosis, all these. But MS is kind of like, oh, you know, you get that shot once in a, and maybe at some point we'll be in wheelchairs. Gosh, my aunt's doing okay. Like, our marketing is bullshit. And I want our marketing to be more serious. I want to show how bad it can be. I want paintings like that to show people how bad it can be, because all that will do is A, educate the public better, and B, help us raise more money. If we need to play dirtier. That's what I believe. I believe we need a Got Milk advertising campaign.
Well, a public service announcement.
Something that also
would be
shows how
good.
hard it can be.
Now,
Yeah.
we did at UC, we did a video, educational video that we brought to a conference about 5 years ago. And everybody after the presentation of this video said, where can I get this video to educate my patients, right? It was a research project. And it was 5 of our patients describing in art, okay, how MS affected them and telling their stories. So one of the patients had these electrical shocks as she's walking up a staircase, right? They had one young man who said he just went and prayed at church because he didn't need medicine. He was just, prayer was going to save him. There was a couple of patients who were brother and sister, and so they had very different experiences with MS. But all of them ended up climbing that staircase to the top floor. They had visually, it was an old like building, and the windows were all boarded up. So they started ripping off the boards from the windows, letting the light in. And then they turned around and you saw that they were painting on the wall like a tree of life. And each one of them was painting that. And so that was their way of explaining how, you can go from all this ugly, painful stuff and then still enjoy painting that tree on the wall. And so I think, if we could do more of that, I mean, we did it ourselves. It was sort of a educational thing, but I mean, on a bigger scale, like Lydia's talking about,
Yeah,
getting somebody interested in that.
I would love to.
The pharmaceutical companies have done a disservice by showing those kinds of commercials.
Yes.
In fact, when there was
Yes.
one of them was for a pill that wasn't out yet, and everybody was coming in the clinic saying, "I want that pill
Yeah,
when it comes
like
out."
once a month pill or whatever, yeah.
It was a picture of a young girl diving into a pool. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
it was ridiculous. And
Yeah.
we said, you have got to stop. Because they would come to us and ask us for our advice. It's called an advisory council. And they'd ask us for our advice, and we'd say, get that commercial off the air. Sorry.
Yeah, no, those images of young people doing all that stuff belong on OnlyFans. Like, show us some real people and show what can really happen, and maybe people will stop and take note. I tried to put that painting I did of me and me up on social media, and they took it down. They said it was grotesque photography. Yeah, so I can't put it up on the internet. And I'm like, how, this is me. It's not photography, obviously. Thanks for the compliment, but it's not photography. But whenever you try to show something that's real about this, people they don't want to see it. And that is a disservice. But you do want to see somebody with a shaved head. There's something about the cancer and other diseases that have taken a hold of that like struggle look. And we haven't found ours yet. We need to come out swinging so we can raise some money, so we can get some attention, so that more people know what's happening. I'll stop. I'm very passionate about it.
Is there anybody else?
Sounds like given modern medicine, early intervention. Is there a black and white? I guess.
No, in fact, diagnostic criteria, it's called McDonald criteria, has been, and before that there was a different criteria before McDonald.
Burger King.
Oh, it just reminds me of what they were talking about on the news this morning, of putting in first class, putting the Shack burgers. Did you hear it? Sorry, I digress.
Shake Shack has vegan burgers though, so I approve.
Anyway, the McDonald criteria is being revised again this year. So it was 2010, 2017, and now 2024. And they got very strict in 2010. They're loosening up in 2024. And they're including more things, such as optic nerve findings on the optic nerve that thins when you have MS. So they're including that in the criteria that wasn't included before, and which is very important. So we have the ability, if anybody looks at the criteria, that in the community that doesn't even do a lot of MS diagnosis, they can look at that criteria and they can say, okay, they have this MRI lesion, they have this symptom, they have whatever, and they can say, okay, I can diagnose. How do we educate the community? So the people who are going into the community neurologist offices are pharmaceutical companies, and they're doing a very bad job of, because if they show in their commercials, in their literature, their print, if they show people that are, you know, ugly, having really bad problems.
If they show real people.
If they show real people, nobody's going to want to buy their drug or use their drug because no. The other companies are showing, you know, models.
So any pretty people get to experience all the joy of it.
Right.
So yeah, it's a human condition.
Do you want a trick if you go to the emergency room as far as diagnosing MS? If actually diagnosing anything, anybody ever goes to the emergency room for any reason, if you want to get put to the front of the line, just say half your tongue is numb. Just half. And they think you're a stroke victim, maybe. And you'll bypass everybody. Even if you have a broken arm, just say it. Half your tongue is numb. You go right to the front.
To get back, there
Yeah.
used to be an anchor woman in LA. I can't remember her name. She had like deformed hands, and she was telling the story once of how the number of times people would say to her, "Oh, it's too bad you have that because you're so pretty."
Right.
Like if she wasn't pretty, it
would be
fine,
okay.
you know.
Yeah, no, we are a culture that reveres, you know, some kind of very false definition of beauty.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah, I'd like to know to what extent you share your life as an artist with your doctors. To what extent you feel that your doctors deal with you, how your doctors deal with you is either affected by or informed by the fact that you're artists and that you involve your disease in your art.
Sure. Yes. So when I have MRIs or with my ophthalmologist, whenever I have some kind of scanning and images, I ask to have a copy or a disc so then I can sometimes fix it either to my art, which you won't see here because I didn't bring that, but or just like the colors or schemes or contrasts, I work that into it. So then after I complete the artwork, I show them, and they're usually pretty excited about it.
And do they ask later, do they want to see what they've contributed? I mean, do you find that your doctors have a different sort of interest in you as someone who involves their disease, you know, in their art? And
For me, no.
Okay.
I mean, my neurologist and my doctor they used to come to my shows, came to my openings, and I even actually did a portrait of Dr. Weiner, my neurologist at the time, because I was like madly in love with him, like in a platonic, your dad in love with him. But they came to my shows; they were incredibly supportive. I may have gotten lucky by that,
Or meow.
but also I also
We'll explain later.
my kids are atheists because they're Gen Z, and they don't feel like it's appropriate to say bless you anymore because they're not Christians or Catholics, but because it's a social norm to respond when somebody sneezes. If you don't respond at all, sometimes that can be considered rude. So they just started meowing. And now anytime somebody sneezes, they just go meow.
Right, I'm doing that.
And people come to our house and somebody will sneeze and they'll be like meowing, meow, 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 meow. Everybody meow, and people are like, they're in a crazy cult. I don't know what's happening. But what about you and doctors and MS and art?
You know, I think that my doctor, who I wish was here, I think he could relate to my art. I think our time we spent was more focused on what's going on with me and my symptoms and less about my art. And
do you think they see you as more of a well-rounded person as opposed to just your disease, because you're not just a patient, but you're you're also an artist who involves your.
I do.
I think if you're seeing a doctor and they don't see you as a whole-rounded person in some way, then you need to find a new doctor.
All right, I think it's time to wrap up. I'm just going to end with something I say that all these shows, all this art, this great art, if these people were traditionally healthy, none of this art would exist. You guys have all made incredibly powerful work depicting your own experiences, and you might have been drawing gnomes under mushrooms and selling more work had you all been healthy. I know you. So, but I'm just saying, so much of this work, this amazing work, is done because you guys have chronic illness, and it's amazing that you found not only this outlet, but just done such amazing things. So thank you all. Thank you. Thank the gallery. Yeah.
Thank you, gallery.